Today I'm going to talk about one of my triggers on the internet in life itself that I'm transitioning to what I call a freedom signal. And that trigger is racism.
Oh boy, here we go again.
The topic of racism, how people discuss racism, how people feel about racism, the fact that people exist and they are proud to be racist. The idea of it seems very childish to me. And ever since I was younger, I've looked at it and tried to analyze it to understand how do people become this way. And so I have my own theories that I'll be sharing today, and I'll be sharing probably through a lot of police videos that trigger me about that trigger me about racism. But today I want to lean in on a topic inspired by O'Shea Duke Jackson. O'Shea Duke Jackson is a creator on the internet, and he covers tons and tons of topics, but this topic stood out to me. I had no idea who these people were, and I was not familiar with the story, but I was engaged. So I'm going to share a few clips from O'Shea Duke Jackson's based off of some quotes that I want to share with you all today, and then we're going to lean into this topic a little beyond the surface level. So let's look at this O'Shea Duke Jackson. I don't know why I keep saying his name like that. Let's look at his clip and let's unfold the story.
We all know what that means, right? So that means if you sleep with a black man, you'll leave dirt around your kitty. That's what he's trying to imply. Which, again, I get it that you don't like black people. Like, I'm not even trying to change your mind. But every piece of content that you have is talking about blacks, which it really shouldn't be an issue if you don't want to be around them. Like, that's the whole point. So now the lady, in my honest opinion, is coming off completely as a racist. How do we know this?
So I just found out about Chud the Builder. And, I don't know a ton about him. I see clips on this app, and I've done a little research. But I do know, in my opinion, that man had some he was going out and doing the exact same thing that black creators have been doing to white people for quite some time.
He had some big kahunas. Let her tell her, right? So she was doing the research. She never says what Chud the Builder was doing was wrong. She's saying what Chud the Builder is doing is equal to whatever black creators were doing. Now, let's continue with this.
Getting in white people's faces. Shutting doors. Okay, that's the new trend. Opening a door for a white person and then shutting it in their face. Black creators walking up to white people going, "Are you racist?" And then questioning them, treating them like, touching their hair, going into their businesses and making a scene. You know the black lady that goes into all the businesses and makes a big old scene, and she's like barefooted and she tries to go behind the counter and she does outrageous things. To me, that was our Chud the Builder.
Now, I have seen some of those close the door skits. And yeah, those are stupid. And if anybody is doing what she's saying, which I don't think that she's probably lying about this because people are doing anything to go viral right now. But two things can be wrong at the same time. If the black creators are doing it, number one, y'all need to stop, because racial tensions right now are probably going to be at the highest it's ever been. And you're probably going to get your ass shot doing stupid stuff like this right now, right? Even if you shouldn't, you might get hurt. Right now, the way that's going right now, stop it. Leave these people alone. Don't go in there pranking them or nothing, because they'll use it for a reason, some of them, to shoot you. Chud the Builder was wrong. She's trying to exonerate him. That's why having conversations with people like her don't make sense. Well, since you black creators did that, Chud the Builder is justified. This is what a lot of white racists are seeing right now. That's how you raise so much money.
He was one person that would actually go out and do the exact same thing that they were doing to us, but they couldn't stand it. They couldn't stand it that somebody dared play the game that they've been playing on us for a long time. That one guy that goes around to old people and asks them, "Hey, did you used to own slaves? Are you?" I mean, what they've been doing to us out in public for quite some time is no different than what Chud the Builder was doing to them, and they couldn't stand that.
This is a very low educated person. Like I said, these are the people when the real white supremacists want to let somebody suffer. People like her, Chud the Builder, they go first. Okay, white supremacists who are subtle, they don't want somebody like her even having a platform to say something like this, because there is nobody that's a logical adult. Okay, if you're a part of a brand, if you're part of a business, a university. You cannot have somebody like her using this reasoning and it makes sense. This is how somebody that's 13 or 14 years old comes to a conclusion. If black people are bothering white people, the right thing to do is to call the police, okay? Because white people do not need to be targeted or harassed simply because they're white or old or ask stupid questions about are they racist. You get those people, you lock them up, you get them arrested, they need to be warned, and then they don't do it again, okay? The problem with Chud the Builder is Chud the Builder was arrested and warned many times, okay? Now, we don't know these black creators you're talking about. We don't know if they were warned, if they're arrested, but we saw it. And those people didn't make national news. She's trying to compare, apples to apples. And again, to a certain degree, it makes sense. But a certain degree, it does not. She's trying to justify his behavior that, so you blacks couldn't take it. Nobody is trying to take anything. Nobody should be harassed. But the problem with white racism and people like her, who I think, the way she's talking, she can't have a real career. So she doesn't have a real high paying job. There's no company that can hire her. So this is a lowly educated person. Okay. So having a debate or talking about this with her makes absolutely no sense. Because again, the rhetoric is just insane.
There's no way they were going to let a white boy walk around freely out in public and get in their faces and call them the exact same bull they were calling us. And they're like, it was bound and determined to happen. You white people just kept encouraging him. You mean kind of like you black people encourage each other to slam doors in old white people's faces? Kind of like how you were encouraging people to shoulder chuck white people on the sidewalk? Kind of like the millions of people, kind of like the millions of views that those videos got of the black ladies just walking through white people and shoulder chucking them left and right? Oh no, though. That's okay if y'all do it, though. But a white boy out there doing that? Oh, no. We can't have that. Now, can we?
So after watching the video, I had several other videos, several other conversations pull up into my memory brain. It was like, whoosh, remember you had this conversation and remember that happened and this happened. So I'm going to show you all those thought processes. But first, I want to lean into which comments out of O'Shea's video really sparked this interaction in my brain. Let's look at this first one. So the lady says, I live in a community that is so white. Somebody had my mail delivered to their house and they brought me over a fruit and nut basket. I love my white community. And I love this video because I couldn't tell if this was a serious video, if it was a satire. At first glance, it seemed like someone is trying to incite something they don't have to. But at the same time, what I loved about the O'Shea Duke Jackson video is he is having a perspective that's balanced. He's not just bringing this content about this woman who seemingly is racist and saying, hey, everybody, look at this racist, hate her, and growl, roar. What he does is he brings perspectives of how some black people or some people in the community also are upset about these different topics, but the way he layers it with the clips, well done. But when I saw this clip, the thing that stood out to me initially was how we form our thinking, like how we make it very slim. So she's thinking, I got this nut basket. I got this fruit basket. I'm in this white neighborhood that 1 + 1 = 2, that every time you're in a white neighborhood and someone forgets your mail, that this is going to be a good position for you, that these things don't exist in other communities because of what I know about this community, which seems to me, I don't know what the naming or framing for this is, but I would call it a limited understanding. When I came across this story, I had no idea about any of the engagements that have been happening that was brought out in this piece. I had no idea who Chud was. I've never heard him in my life, which is fantastic about social media, is that there's so much happening. There's so much happening that you won't even encounter one thing or the other unless somehow, somewhere, your algorithm starts to connect you. And then you're like, oh, who is this person? So let's figure out who is Chud and what is the story and why is his name trending right now?
His real name is Dalton Etherly. He's a 28-year-old live streamer from Tennessee with about 229,000 followers on X. According to multiple news outlets, his content was racist by design. He walked up to people in public, mostly black people, used racial slurs on camera, called black people chimps, and posted the reactions for engagement. He sometimes displayed a firearm while he did it. On social media, he hinted that one of his confrontations would end with somebody dying. In early May 2026, a viral clip showed him allegedly spraying a chemical agent at a black man after the man knocked his hat off. A few days later, on May 13th, he was outside the Montgomery County Courthouse in Clarksville, Tennessee, for a debt hearing. He got into an argument with a man named Joshua Fox. He reached for the firearm in his jacket pocket. He fired his weapon. Fox was struck multiple times. Joshua is a black disabled veteran. He is a father of 3. He was airlifted to a hospital for emergency surgery. Chud is now charged with attempted criminal homicide, aggravated assault, employing a firearm during a dangerous felony, and reckless endangerment. His bond is set at $1.25 million. If convicted on the attempted homicide charge alone, he is looking at 15 years to 60 years in a Tennessee state penitentiary.
All right, so that's a little bit about Chud. This woman is an advocate for Chud. She's sharing her perspectives from her lived experience on why Chud needs backup. If you check out O'Shea's full video, you'll get an understanding of the type of concepts that she introduced into why she wanted to support him. And as I'm listening to her, I've also heard this in other spaces, in other communities, where when something wrong happens, and it's outside of your community and it harms you in your community, that harm feels like a snake, and everybody associated or looks like or has anything to do with that community that did that one thing is now the snake. The whole picture is now a snake. Community, one issue happened, snake. But people will say it's not just one issue, it's several issues. And then others will say, well, everyone, everywhere has the same issues, but it seems more dramatic when it's outside of your community. When it's outside of your community and it's vile and it's crazy, then we all should stand up about it. What's unique about this is we have a history of very, very telling stories about a community, which makes it seem like people have space to be upset. But even with that understanding, even with that belief, if we're living in the now and we're dealing with people one by one and we accept any progression, we can only move forward if we don't attach the person that's right in front of our face to their history. And I think that's important because if we are growing, if anyone is growing in this land, we would hope that the version of us that had a limited thinking or was immature in their thinking would not be held to the same standard if they decided to mature, or if they had nothing to do with the same ideologies of someone they did not know or interacted with from their past. Which is why I believe that when we're thinking about racism and we're thinking about who to get angry and who to get upset about, it's the evidence that shows us who those people are. We deal with that individual as that individual. But when we use in our language that all people that fit this, or because these people are this way, and we make it the entire society, now when we interact and we go out and see those people without them even being part of that case, we now make them the case of all of our judgments from our limited view or from our view that only shows the worst of a community. And that's beyond different communities. Now, when I talk about the immature thinking, this is another quote that O'Shea says in his video that I think we should lean into a little. He says, this type of thinking is how somebody that's 13 or 14 years old comes to a conclusion. Having a debate or talking about this with her makes absolute no sense. So this is one thing I'm learning about this idea of racism and why it triggers me. Is because even if you think logically, even if you can find all the evidence of good or logical sense, there are individuals who won't even open the case. There are people who might not even interact with a thought outside of their belief system because they just are too lazy to do so, or because they love what this does for them. The hate that fills their body for some reason makes them feel good, or does it? It's something that we can investigate. But somehow we believe that if we think logically about, oh, you probably shouldn't harm people that you don't know, or you probably shouldn't make generalizations about people based off of your limited experiences, knowing you haven't met everyone in the world, people are still going to respond and still disregard any logical sense. And that is only because of immaturity. And there's a soft spot when I talk about immaturity because there are things that I'm still learning as I navigate this earth experiences. I think this is my first time here on earth, but maybe I'll figure out later. But there are things that I'm still learning. Like I had no idea that this was something happening in the world, that people still operated in this way. Because when I go out in the real world, in my real life, I'm not interacting with some of the stories told in this video. So those stories are people are going up to people and shoving them with their elbows because of the color of their skin. People are being rude and disregarding that these are just human beings that had nothing to do with whatever trauma you calculated in your head and harming them. I think that's something that needs to be exposed. And this is why I think social media is one of those places where it seems like it's bad for you, but it also in the same breath can be good because there's so many thoughts circling around and you're like, wow, there are people who think this. I wonder how many other people think this. Or we can go the other route and say, I don't care how people think about me because that's their business. But this last quote I want to pull out is because it did make me think about the people that are around me and what they could be thinking, because I am labeled as a brown woman in America. So the lady that O'Shea is reviewing says, the amount of special treatment that Black women get in the workplace blows my mind. They could be in a box of rocks. They're given special leeway. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, and I was like, where does she work? Who are these people that she's talking about? Because although I don't have interactions with everyone on earth, there are people in the United States of America who would disagree. They would disagree that they're getting special treatment. Now, I do not want to just jump over that, because when people talk about DEI, they're pushing philosophies or programs or orders because of the color of people's skin. There are dual lens that we should review. One is the reason why people have to put those things in place is because there has been a history of mistreatment or disorder when it comes to everyone getting a fair chance no matter what their color is. I think a fair chance without their color doesn't mean because you are this color, you need to get ahead of the line. It just means because you are this color and the history says that we've been doing y'all wrong, we just want to correct that. But if you're not qualified, you should not be qualified. But if you are, we're not going to disqualify you just because you are a color. For me, it seems simple, but somehow we're complicating these things. The other part of this is maybe people are behind because another group of people had a head start, and so they may not be qualified, and that needs to be understood. That you cannot just want to be it because of the color of your skin and think that you are own something. You just do what everybody else would need to do and just be good at whatever it is that you do, that people can't ignore it. But it doesn't mean that you will be the best. With the reality of it, if someone's ahead of you and they've been ahead of you for a long time, there's going to take extra sauce in order for you to catch up. And that's the reality of it all. But anyway, I thought about that line and maybe it triggered me because I identify as a human in the United States of America who probably falls into this based off of everyone's perspective of me. They want to put a label on me, right? They put a label on you. We put labels on each other in order to organize each other in boxes. Here go all the purples, here go all the pinks, here go all the yellows. And we deal with yellows this way, we deal with pinks this way, and we deal with purples this way. So we've done this to organize how we are dealing and navigating through the land. And because history says this is how we've always done it, or this is the behavior that is attached to this, we just assume position. But I'm challenging us and I'm challenging myself for all these things that we've been doing for such a long time. When will we realize that it's not working or it's not benefiting others if we all operate in what's called a tribalism mindset? And I learned that from my recent podcast interview with Dante Owens. And if you want to check that out, the link is in the description. But I think that this is a really good conversation about race and our beliefs about race. Is because if we're acting tribal and if we are going to already put a posture up of defense, how do we imagine that anything good is going to come from it? What is the bother for us to look at the evidence of us working together in being humankind or being better people as best as we can? What's the problem with us investigating our time or investing our time in doing such thing? This is why this video triggered me. But it's also freeing me. If you have not been here before, I'm creating this concept called freedom signals. I believe that free people can free people. And the way that you become free is with you're thinking thoroughly. You're taking time to not only consume content, but realize like, why does this content stand out to you? Why does this content make you mad? Why does it make you happy, sad, or dream? What is it about this content that's sharing a little bit about your identity? And when we come across content which is baiting us, right? It's like, oh, get mad at the other group, get mad at the other side. There comes a point in time where we have to realize maybe somebody is playing with us. You know, maybe there are ideas that are being manipulated in the space that we are being victims to. And maybe we don't have to be a victim if we just decide to think more clearly or more honestly about what's happening. And that might not be the easiest thing to do. Me coming on a YouTube video and saying, hey, let's do it. We got to do it. It may not work. But maybe one person, one place with one dream will say, you know what? I have a different perspective about that now. Who knows? Anyway, I think this is a good video. And if you want to watch it, I'll also put that link in the description. He goes a little bit more into details about the Chud incident along with what he calls the big sister energy. But as I navigate through this topic, I want to also bring in some perspectives of that limited worldview. And so on the screen now, I want to share with you some pictures that I use ChatGPT for. So ChatGPT, if you have not used ChatGPT for creating images, it's doing a good job right now. Whatever that fast latest release has done, people now, you can see it all over YouTube, are using their thumbnails using AI. AI has a lot of different tools to make your thumbnails very sophisticated. And so I've been practicing with these tools, but also bringing them inside of my content and illustrating the thoughts that I want to relay to you all. Because as I think in like a lot of circles, boom, 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 bam. And so I'm hoping that as I illustrate and get my thoughts more organized, which is for me better through writing, I want to also illustrate it to you, what I think about the beliefs on racism. Now, it starts with this picture here. There's a man, he's in this limited world view. He can only see this little window. And as we navigate through his story, we learn that, hey, if we're in the world and we only review the world based off of maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 interactions, then that's not an honest view. It's honest to us because those are the only choices that have been presented to us, but it's not honest if we don't have the full story. And I've said this in many different ways, and I'll continue to until that one person says, my perspective has changed. But when I think about how easy this is to realize, it becomes a trigger to me to realize that there are people who really think in an isolated or limited view and they don't care. I would not want to live my world thinking that just because I'm in this one area, that this is the only truth that exists and that this is the only option. Because it goes back into what opportunities I have available to me, what I could accomplish. How good can this life get if I can only see the worst in myself or in others? So this is back to how we talk to one another and how we talk to ourselves. That's a reflection on how we see the world. So I imagine that if you don't want to see yourself or the world in a space where everything is dark and gloomy, that you have to start looking for evidence of what does exist out of my limited view. So the limited view is that thought that you're like, I am so dumb, right? You tell yourself you're so dumb, and then you start to get evidence all around you. Like, yeah, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb. But then somehow that limited view gets open. Why? Because you interact with people. This is why community is important. You start interacting with people that are different than you, that have different perspectives. Some you may agree with, some you may not. But now because you have this access to learn other people, you now realize there are other ideas. Like, I think I'm dumb. Maybe I am dumb. But however, there's some education that I can lean into to not be dumb, right? There's also the truth behind maybe you are dumb that you can sit with. And if you want to get better in whatever the idea that you have leaned into, then what are the processes? What are the tools that you're going to use in order to get better? Now, here's my truth. I have been on YouTube for lots and lots of years, and I cannot get past a certain subscriber amount.
New year, same you, and that's okay, because personal growth is for losers.
There's are lots of theories that I can tell myself. There's a lot of things that I can say about, oh my goodness, this doesn't matter. But if I start looking for evidence or understanding and my why behind my approach, I'm like, oh, I don't have to only believe that side, which is true. I can also tap into other areas of like, why am I here? Beyond the fact that I think that one person is going to change their perspective on one topic, one place in America. And when it comes to the topic of racism, I feel like that is one area where if we all leaned in just a little bit more, it could make this experience feel less hell-like. Speaking of hell, there's a creator that I was privileged to have as a guest on the Earth Experience podcast that shares their near-death experience. And I want to play a clip from this creator because I feel like it blends into this space of the illusions that happen when we have limited views. So Dominic Morrow is a creator online. He's a pastor, and he became a pastor after all of these experiences that led him to what he called a near-death experience, and he experienced hell. Although I'm not going to go into the full conversation, I do want to highlight some of the key moments that drew me into the conversation that he had with Afterlife on YouTube, because it goes into this value or theme that I want to push is humanity. With all of the AI tools and technology that we have brought in so far in this land and this life, we have shown that we are capable of thinking. We can think about big ideas. We can put together buildings. We can put together systems. We can put together education and degrees and all of the things. And so if we can do all those things, why are we not able to accomplish being able to see another person as a human who wants to enjoy this earth experience, and that human can have peace if we all find the peace within ourselves? I feel like that's one of the things that we can do in the United States of America I feel like that is one of the things that you can do on earth, okay, is that you can try your best to love yourself and allow that love to reflect on the other people around you. And hear me when I say this, I believe that this is a challenge because it's been years and years and years of being taught otherwise. But if we practice, we can become better. So here, let's play this clip and I'll tell you why I brought this into our conversation.
They wanted to attack me. They wanted to rip me apart. And I can just feel the hatred that they have for mankind, the hatred that they have for us. It is beyond anything. It is beyond, and you can feel it's ancient, and you can feel it is powerful. It is power in their hate. It is so powerful. Yeah. All right, 1 second. Okay. Because people don't understand that these demons feed off our depression. They feed off our anxiety. They feed off our aggression. They feed off our hate. They just feed off of us. So that's why they call us in the background. They don't have the power to make us do it, but they have the power to influence situations that make us do these things. And they feed off that. And that's one thing I've learned. The hatred for us, that's why I love all mankind. Because the hatred they have for us, it would make you love all mankind and stick together against these beings. Really. We have, all the visions that are caused are just an illusion. But yeah, that's one thing. That's what I learned from that. But as I was laying on the ground, I'm sorry, I just had to just reiterate that point.
Here's why I'm talking about these topics. Topics like race, division, belief, faith, they free me. I know that sounds strange because most people will tell you these conversations are heavy, and they are. But what feels heavier to me is the alternative. Carrying around things I inherited without ever opening the box, repeating things I was taught without asking who taught them and why. Every time I look at one of my own frames and find out it's smaller than I thought, I feel lighter. Lighter because I let one thing go that wasn't mine to carry. That's the feeling I'm chasing. And I want you all to try chasing this feeling too. When Dominic is talking about hell, I can only think about the murmurs in the back of my mind of everyone just kind of sharing their experiences, is that people don't like Earth lately. They don't like the United States experience. In some parts of the world and some parts of the United States where it feels like you have everything, you also feel like you're not accomplishing or getting things because there's illusions and deceptions and all the different things that are clouding our mind and our judgment about our experience and about this experience of others. But what's key about what Dominic is sharing is that he cares about humankind and that there are these entities that hate the humankind. So the more that they can separate and provide division, like through elements like racism or life through frames like racism, the more they can eat off of that. So I imagine in this image is that, hey, every time you go out and you speak ill about someone without any reasoning, or if you go out and you find the worst in someone, or you go out and you just hate on people, it's like you keep feeding this entity that makes that idea even bigger, and it starts to overtake what the world and this earth feels like. And even if you don't subscribe to a belief system or a religion or a God, the idea that we're all sharing this space together and that there's possibility that we can all just show the fruit of our belief system gives us an opportunity to say, like, well, what beliefs are you showing fruit of? Like, is it hate? And I know we all have our things that we're working through, but is that the thing that you want to choose? Is that the thing that you want to feed into the world? Whether you believe it as far as this hell experience or you believe in a God or a heaven, we do know that there are behaviors that people attach themselves to, and it impacts our world, which is why we have so many different organizations to help people out of this and to save people from that. It's because we haven't mastered how we don't have to get to that point with just our day-to-day one-on-one interactions. Not saying it's perfect. It's just something that we can practice through. But I love the interview because although it's talking about a topic, this is where my perspective had changed about these topics that seems very heavy, like hell, it's dark. He had the experience and I could learn from the experience. I didn't have the experience, but now I'm open up to learning about, oh, this person had this experience. I don't know if is real or not, and I have some draw into this experience that I never had before, right? And now I'm wanting to learn more. I have questions. So I invited Dominic to my own podcast, and then I was able to engage in questions. But I bring this up because the same idea is if you see someone different than you and you associate with them something that you've seen on the media or someone else's bad experience or your one limited experience, what might be helpful is finding a space where you can have questions. And this might be difficult because there's so much tension. If a white person comes up to a black person and they say, "Can I touch your hair?" Most of the time, the black people are going to be like, and they're going to go and they're going to tell and be upset and mad. But if we're going to get anywhere, there might be someday, somewhere, we can say, okay, people are going to have questions about you, and they're going to come from a space of immaturity. They're going to come from a space of a teenage person and their ideology still learning the world. And we can mature together by letting that be as it is, letting them be immature in their thought, and then help them mature their thought by being open versus us going back and forth and having more controversial about things. That's probably not right. But being more controversial, you know. Okay, so last thing, because since I'm bringing in some of the guests into this conversation, these last two guests, I think, was fitting, in my mind at least, to add to this conversation about the beliefs of racism. Because both these women grew up in probably societies very similar to the young lady that was brought out in the O'Shea Duke Jackson video in the beginning. They were in communities where they did not have to think about racism at all, but they decided to think about it eventually. So let's bring up this first guest. Now is the second guest. Her name is Kelly Snyder. I want to pull out some quotes after we watch this clip from her that I think are helpful for today's conversation.
The main thing, when you get into the racial issues, it's far more subtle because, like, when I was a kid, I didn't live around any Black people. We lived around Native American people. But I grew up during the civil rights era. So I was seeing all this playing out on TV, and I didn't see, I heard all the right words from teachers and church leaders and parents, but I never saw people interacting with people of a different race, aside from a little bit with Native American people. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I didn't get the whole picture. So when we moved to New Orleans when I was 13, and we lived around a lot of Black people, and I went to school with a lot of Black people, it was like oh, so white people do treat them differently. And it was something that I had not picked up on as a younger person because I just didn't see it play out. I think in a way that was lucky for me because of how it ended up playing out. I got the message really well absorbed before I saw how people really acted. But at the same time, I've been learning recently that that little town that I grew up in Oklahoma was pretty awful as far as race. It wasn't officially a sundown city, but it was a sundown city. It didn't have the awful little sign in the edge of town, but some of the nearby towns did. So, so I really just picked up a good message as a kid, and it didn't play out. I didn't get a visual of it until we moved into a more diverse community.
Okay, so going back to the picture, the strip of that limited worldview, this quote stood out to me in connecting our investigation today. She said, I just realized that a lot of things are hidden from white people. I really kind of resent that, and I want to get to the bottom of it. So she's an investigator. This is what we're encouraging people to investigate themselves, the way that they think, and also the world around them, if all of this makes sense or if there is a better way. I feel like it's an investigation worth having. Like, get to the bottom of why we keep going back and forth with each other. Get to the bottom of why I get triggered every time someone isn't thinking thoroughly. Get to the bottom of it so we can free ourselves. And so when I think about the conversation that I'm having, this is the opportunity for me not only to free myself through questioning and learning perspectives, but also to showcase that there are people out here freeing people. Free people, free people. So I'm putting that on a t-shirt. I wrote an article about the t-shirt campaign, but the goal is, what are the ideas and concepts and questions that we can put on a t-shirt to start building those communities? And it might not be that everyone around you are going to be your best friend, but we can start having thoughtful conversation beyond our surface level small talk. I love small talk, but there are questions that we probably can learn from one another that can start to open that window, and we can start to see more about life and even adopt language that will help us understand why someone might be different or where did that even come from. And that goes to even this woman at the beginning of the video. My heart goes out to her because I would feel stuck looking at myself in the outside world, thinking that I could not see anything different beyond just one instance and stamping it on everyone else. Like, I would want to see how beautiful the world can be. I would want to see how many other people are out here thinking clearly, are out here showing evidence and good fruit, aren't always a part of a scandal, aren't always a part of some drama. I love to see people live free. Most of what I want to curate from my own experience is like, can I be myself, joyful, not have to keep performing or not have to always do something in order to reap the benefits of living on earth? Can I attain life, liberty, and happiness? Can I learn through that, through questions and exploring all the different ideas that are on this place? Is it something that is possible? And even if it's not, the journey towards figuring out like how close to true love and happiness and joy and all the things can I get to? If everything can go right, then why not let it go right? This is the law of Danny that I made up too. I'm just going to throw in all of my stuff, my ideas in this one video. The law of Danny, everything that can go right will go right. It's something I just made up. You know what inspired it? There was another law that said that everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And I was like, I probably should study what they meant by that, but I still like the framing of something different. And so I'm going to create something different. Why? Because in the same space that we create these narratives about one another that are horrible, we can also start creating stories that are not horrible. They could be better for us. And even if they're not true in the space, we can start creating what it feels like to be true in the space. Like, not just saying affirmations and not believe in affirmations, or if you are a scripture person, writing or reading these scriptures and just hoping that it all falls in place. But it's really, how do I operate and, become that? How do I make my words live like this is true? Especially because when we talk about the beliefs about racism, we can see evidence of it being a case. Even if people want to hide the fact that racism is a thing of the past, is something that's still staining, and it's something to bring into a conversation. People are still having a conversation, not always because they want to always go down the race circle or battle or lane, but because there's something that hasn't been resolved. If somebody keeps bringing something up, it means that something hasn't been resolved. And it's not always because that person is trying to draw things out. It's because it wasn't properly cared for. And this is what we can do as a people is if we're not going to properly care for other people because we cannot hold the barriers of everyone else in the world, we can start by properly caring for ourselves. And I imagine that the same way we have that hell experience that Dominic talked about, where we kept feeding them. And then it was like, you know, they're feeding off of our depression and our anxiety and our race baiting and our division. There will be more starving, I would think would be the opposite, if we started to nurture our conversations or care, even if it's just for that day and that interaction and those moments of time. How many can we add up so that is taking more of this experience? But this is just a theory. Who knows? We probably could all start practicing being kind to one another, being mindful to one another, not always finding something to hate, not finding something to gossip about. We probably could do all of that and it still not matter. But but do you really think that if we really tried it, do y'all really think it wouldn't matter? There's evidence that these other things have an impact on us. The words that people decide to use in their tongue to harm another person, like it does harm them or it frustrates them. It triggers them. Like they respond to those words in that type of way. So instead of just being lifeless, instead of being passive or performative, we can start figuring out, like, what if we just try to get closer to what is real, if that is a thing? I mean, we could try. I see people practice at a sport and become better at it. I've seen evidence of that. This is a sport. It takes a little bit of work. And it's more than just talking about it on a YouTube video. It's leaving our social media apps and leaving our desktop. And after you watch this video, going outside and interacting with life. Maybe that will be a person that you don't know one day. Maybe it will be going to a play. I love to do play reviews because now I'm looking at where the ideas and thoughts of this humankind comes into an art form for us to easily consume. So now I can see perspectives and I write about those. Those are things that I like to do, but it also helps culture me in order to be in those spaces and to write from different perspectives. I don't always go to spaces that only look like me. I go to spaces that look different than me because I want to learn. Are we more alike than we are different?
We are told in Genesis that in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was God, and the Word was with God. That's in Genesis. Words are things. You must be careful. Careful about calling people out of their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that. Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally into you.
It seems like we are, but let's look at this last clip. This last clip comes from Jane Elliott. I had Jane Elliott on as a guest a while ago. And she's passionate. And it was my first interview where I felt like, ooh, there was, ooh, okay. I was like, wow, there's, ooh, okay. And the thing about this interview is that it reminds me of this time where I was watching a movie or a show called Lovecraft. In Lovecraft, there's a woman who is by default a Black woman, but because of like a spell or a curse, or I don't know, because of some potion thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone has seen it. But because of some experience, she is now able to be her Black woman, but she's able to be in the body of a white woman, right? She's now able to navigate still with her Black experience inside, but externally she's presenting as a white woman. And it's one of my favorite concepts because I thought about this when I had my interview with Jane Elliott, because Jane Elliott is so passionate about getting to the bottom of this, as we heard with Kelly, that she is angry. she's so angry that you can also see that anger towards the people that look like her. It almost makes me feel like inside of her body is like an angry Black woman. And I don't want to say it like that, but what I mean by this, because I want to bring this to a fuller circle, is that if an angry Black woman got a chance to be in a white woman's body in this world, like how would she navigate? Would she do everything to hurt people, or would she try to educate? And when I say angry, the angry Black woman idea that has been brought out in spaces is that, oh, she's so angry and she's so mad, but no one starts to nurture. Like, why do you think that she gets that way? What makes that particular woman? Because it's not all Black women, but there are Black women who decide to be angry. And are they just being honest with how they truly feel? And are they being honest about what conditions are there instead of masking it? And so they just come out with all of the things. We listen to each other. Sometimes when people are angry or they are very dismissive, like that woman in the beginning, it's stemming from something that is from their childhood. So a lot of this adulting is us reassessing our childhood, us trying to figure out what happened there, us interacting with the belief system that have been taught to us and creating something new from it. So when we're children, we're more susceptible to whatever belief systems that are delivered to us. And it's only some of us that rebel against those belief systems, especially when it's harmful. But some, because you come into the world and these are the people that you meet first, you naturally trust them with the ideas and thoughts. Which is why in my household, we encourage critical thinking. We encourage you to have questions. And part of this is a very difficult process because it means that when you were told you're to be put in a child's place or to not have questions, it means that you're doing something way different. And you're like, oh, you got a question. Now you have to answer it. Now you got to talk through it. But there is a beauty in being able to do so and practicing the balance and doing so, because although your children are still maturing and you have life experience, there are things that you can learn from your child, even though they are still maturing. Because here's the thing, you might be an adult in an adult body that still needs maturing, that still has a child that wasn't nurtured for. And people like to throw out ideas that, oh, that's like hogwash. I don't know if that's the way you say it, but they just like, oh, okay. They're like, don't believe this stuff. And but everybody has their belief systems about all the things. But if we took a time to pause of like, why do you think somebody feels like they have to do this? Like, why do you think people respond? It takes more time for us to undo all of the things that we have been indoctrinated with. And it takes more energy to do these things, but it's a high return on that investment. It's a high return on the investment when you start thinking about your life and how you navigate through it intentionally, because now you can open yourself up to like, how great can life get and what was limiting me before? And how can I start freeing other people by sharing the fruit of just my life? Even if I don't go out there and become a talk show host, if I don't go out there and I become, a therapist, if I don't go out there and become all of these things with a title, can the fruit of my life be evidence that, oh, this can exist, this can happen? We can free people by freeing ourselves. Okay, I got off of this. Hopefully you guys are still following me. If you're still here, let me know that you are here and that you made it this far by clicking on the like button. And if you have any feedback or comments below, please share them. Like, let me know what you're thinking about this. What are your beliefs on racism? Like, your honest beliefs, and are there anything that you would want to transition about those beliefs? Like, when I was thinking about my beliefs, I've been in a lot of different spaces when it comes to it. Like, I had a conversation with someone and I said, I don't like that we put labels on one another that don't make sense. Like, they say you're a black person, you're a white person, but we got this color box, a crayon box, and brown looks way different than black, and white looks way different than what, a vanilla person looks like. But it's very confusing that we decide that this is what the language is, and then we had to put this label on people. And now we use these identifiers, like we want to separate ourselves by just the color. But it makes more sense to me. It's like my values match with yours. Because if I'm going to deal with people, if I'm going to work with people, I would want them to be mindful. If I'm in a position I don't have to work with someone who is harmful with their words or harmful with their delivery in this earth, then I'm going to remove myself from that experience. And it seems like that's the option for me, right? But when we place ourselves with this group and this group, what we fail to realize is in one group of all the purple crayons and one group of all the pink crayons, you guys are all one color, but there's a group in there who believes in war, and there's a group of people in there who likes anime, and there's a group of people there who like sports, and their ideas are very different. They are the same color, but their ideas are different. And if there's some person in this group that dominates and says like, y'all all gotta do it this way, then you're stripping them of their individuality and their creativity and the chance to explore and to investigate what else is there in this world. Because they can come over to this world and then come over to this pink world and realize, oh, I didn't know that you can do these type of things. I'm interested in that. That's how I look at it. But that could be an elementary view. You guys let me know. Do you feel like you have to have a war with these thoughts and ideas around racism? Or are you, if you are that person, I'm not assuming that anyone coming on this video already has that war, but if Chud stood out to you in the theme and you wanted to know more about that conversation, it's more about the acts that he has shown on the internet and the spaces. Like, that was inspired by something. I'm not sure if it was inspired because of his history or his family or if someone hurt him. But those are the type of questions I'm wondering, like, how do people get to this place where they feel like it's okay? Some of it comes from the other side doing these things, and it's like a playpen, right? Toddlers are like, you can't do that. Like, that's what I was hearing when I would listen to the lady in the beginning. It's like, oh, these people do it, so we get to do it. It's what I think about being around children, and they're like, oh, I need this, I want to do it. It's like the maturity of being, when you become an adult, it's like, you don't have to do that. Like, there's other angles, there's other perspectives. But if you're still thinking like a child and your body has become an adult, it becomes weird. But speaking of the crayon box, and this is the last thing I'll share before I let you all go, Jane Elliott talks about us all being brown. Us all being one people.
The minute somebody says to me, well, I have a little black son, I say, you do? Then you have a son who isn't human, don't you? And as long as you are willing to call him black, you are willing to allow other people to treat him as though he is less than human. Because this all started, this white and black business started with a vicar in the Catholic Church in the late 1400s and early 1500s. His name was Torquemada. He was going to change every Christian into a Catholic. And anybody who wasn't a Christian, he was going to kill. He had killed 2,000 people before somebody reminded him, brought it to his attention, that many of the people he had killed were Christians. And at that point, he realized that you can't tell what a person's religion is by looking at them. He had to figure out a way to make it easier to decide who deserved to live and who deserved to die. And he set upon skin color. Now, everybody at that time, just as everybody at this time, was shades of brown. They were all shades of brown, just as we are all shades of brown today. He set upon calling the lighter brown people white because white is the color of goodness and purity. He called the darker brown people black because black is the color of savagery and evil. Mm. And because he did that, he put us at polar opposites. We have spent the last about 500 years treating people positively or negatively on the basis of an idea that skin color tells us whether you are fit to live or fit to die. And we have killed people on the basis of that for the last 500 years, and we're still doing it today.
And what I'm learning from her messaging is that she's frustrated. She's frustrated with her own people because they're okay with this thinking. She had the blue eye, brown eye experience so long ago. It was a topic that rocked people's boats. But I imagine that along the way, there were some perspectives that were changed because they just were focusing on that one little small window. And they didn't even realize it. Just going back to Kelly's statement, she didn't know what she didn't know. And I think a lot of us are in spaces where we just don't know that exists. I had no idea that Chud existed, that he was doing these things, nor did I know that there were black people out there doing these things and bumping into people. I had no idea because in my real world, none of that is happening. I don't see that. And because I don't see it, it doesn't mean that it's not happening and it doesn't exist. But because I don't see it, it also means that there's another reality that does exist. And that is what I hope makes sense in this conversation and belief about racism is that, yeah, there are people who are one way and there are people who are another way. But even with all this data and all this information, the world still gets bigger. And if we started to maybe even go inward and start realizing like what we can do in our world, we might be able to not even interact or come across those parts of the world that think so limited because we have expanded the way that we think. And that might bring in more opportunities to see the best out of this experience while we're here. But as I talk about that, I also notice that when you are dealing with people who are just being meanies but they're being bullies and they are impacting your livelihood, you might also see them as dangerous. There's a reason why people feel like they always have to talk about race. There's a reason why people feel like they have to be on guard because there are people out there who showing us evidence that they still think this way. That there's even with all the social media data that we have, they haven't came over to another algorithm where they're like, oh, that's not happening to every person. Even in social media itself, it's staying in one lane. But the beauty about this world is like we can travel and we can go to other perspectives. We can identify new languages and try to understand where we are connected. So that's all that I had today. I want to thank O'Shea for doing such a great job sharing this. I had no idea this concept, and I thought that it was a great topic to lean into. It's one of those old, worn out topics, but there's a perspective that I hope that we can talk about more. We can lean into in order to see like how can we actually really get beyond this topic. And I don't mean get beyond it. And let me say this last thing. I don't mean get beyond it and say like, oh, it never existed or stop acting like it happens. I've seen creators have content and the way that they focus their content is usually they are identified as a Black person and they want to prove that racism doesn't exist. So they use other Black people and they take their stories and they manipulate them and shame them. And then they look at the other side and make everything good. And there's no balance and honesty with that because on both sides, if you're being an honest creator or you're being honest in your delivery in this world, it's like, if I look out the window, I can see that on this side, there's also things that are happening that's good, things that are happening that's displeasing. It doesn't mean this other side is perfect. There's also truths that haven't been unraveled, and there are people who are unraveling the truth and being their best. And so those seem like very simple elementary concepts. And as adults, I don't want to say we haven't because that will be going into this part that I feel like no one has done it. I think there are people who are thinking through these things. I've had people come on the show who are evidence of people thinking through these things.
The wider window theory. A view can be real and still be incomplete. Bondage begins when we mistake one window for the whole world. Freedom begins when we let more evidence, more people, more stories, and more honest questions into the room. This theory does not ask me to deny what I have seen. It asks me to stop worshiping the smallest version of it. If I had a painful experience, that experience matters. If I watch repeated patterns, those patterns deserve attention. If history has shown harm, that history deserves respect. But if I let one window become my whole world, I may build a life around offense instead of discernment. The wider window theory is not about pretending everyone is safe. It's about refusing to let fear become the only architect of my reality. Maybe freedom starts here, realizing the room I inherited is not the whole house.
Until next time, hold on to you as much as you can. Hold on to your health, your well-being, and your mind. Be mindful. Bye.
Breathe.